Hi, how you doing? Today I'm going to show you how to make gluten-free, dairy-free Italian meatballs. Now the problem is a lot of people don't even bother with them because they don't know how to convert it from regular to gluten-free. Well, I'm going to show you. And of course, unless you find frozen meatballs in the grocery store, because some of you have big grocery stores, but unless you find some gluten-free meatballs in your freezer section, you need to make your own. Okay, first I want to show you what we're going to do. We're going to take a stick of celery, just one stick, cut it into this size pieces, and I've got what I think is the equivalent of 1 carrot, and half of an onion. That's a small onion that I chunked up. And I've got 4 garlic cloves here. I didn't chop them, just put them in there. And I'm putting them in a small food processor. Now if some of you don't have a small one, use your large one. You can even use your blender. And don't worry about your blender making it like pureed, because the flavors are all going to be there. What I want to add to this is some parsley. It's always good to have some fresh that you can add to your foods because it brightens the flavor. And I'm going to put a teaspoon of pepper, half a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And I just buy the jarred Italian seasoning. Then I'm going to add, this is optional, I'm going to add a teaspoon of Dijon mustard and a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. That's just also to brighten up the flavors with the Worcestershire sauce and the mustard. Okay, I think that's it for my base. I'm going to get this all together. First time I used this, I didn't click it in, and I had this all over the counter. It's not there yet, so I need to, and like any blender or food processor, I need to push things down. And now I'm going to really whirl it. Make sure I click it in. Come on, Barb. Here we go. Everything's clicked. It's still pretty chunky. Well, that's not going to help. Let me get another spoon. I kind of want it really pureed, not water, like where it's water. But I want those flavors in there. And the carrots are giving me a little bit of grief. But let's blend them up again. Where there's a will, there's a way, especially in cooking. Okay, now I got my base. It's a little bit chunky, not much. It's all ground up. And this is what they would call sofrito. And sofrito is dominantly a South American flavor that they put in their sauces. And you can buy it on the shelves in the grocery store. Sometimes it's got tomato in it. And it's a base for soups or anything like that you want to make. In this case, it's going to be meatballs. Okay, we'll be back in a second and I'll show you how we do it. Today I'm going to be using 1 pound of ground beef. And for the Italian part of it, I bought some hot flavored Italian sausages. Now these come in the tubes. So what I do is I just Grab them like this. I slice the top, and so I get the meat out of them, and that way you don't have to chop them up or anything. Now I'm making these ahead of time so I can freeze them and have them in my freezer, because I'm really tired of needing meatballs, and of course I don't have access to frozen gluten-free, dairy-free meatballs. And this comes off fairly easy, just be patient with it. Any that's stuck in there, just take it out of there. And you could put, if you wanted to, in this sofrito, instead of parsley, you can put basil, fresh basil. Mine went out of season. It's out on the porch, and it's not any good anymore. So I'm going to take this. We're going to need 2 eggs. I used to, where a lot of recipes use 1, and the reason behind that is I need to keep the meatballs moist. Two meatballs. Now as a binder, I'm going to use half a cup or less of instant dried mashed potatoes. The kind you have in your cupboard that have no butter in them. And I'm going to start mixing this. Get in there and just mix it together. Make sure everything's blended in there. I think I'm going to use more potatoes. There, that's a half a cup. And here I have, because in Italian cooking for meatballs, they put Parmesan cheese in their meatballs. We can't have them. So I'm going to use nutritional yeast, which is very good for you. It has a cheesy flavor. I bet nobody knew that. Well, of course, if you're dairy-free, everybody knows it, but I keep this on my counter. I bought 2 bottles of it, and it's very good for you. It'll give this meat a cheesy flavor. Okay, now my sofrito. I'm just going to use my hands because my gloves are slippery, so I can't pick up the thing. Now, don't panic. I am using my meat gloves with fresh sofrito that we're going to eat, but I wanted to save some. Get your jarred tomato, your favorite jarred tomato sauce, marinara or whatever, and I typically use, because I'm not vegan, the kind that has meat in it. But anyway, before you start your jarred sauce, put a little olive oil in your pan, and then fry this up a little bit so it'll cook, and it'll make a fresh base so you can freshen up your commercially jarred sauce. Now I'm not making this sauce today. This was just to show you how you can make gluten-free, dairy-free meatballs. Now the way I'm going to do it today is I'm going to make my meatballs about this size. I can do it with my hands, but I want to try this because it's brand new. Let me mix it up a little bit better. I want a medium meatball. I don't want a great big one. Now if you want to know if your meatballs have enough seasoning, I just put salt and pepper in here. Whether they need more salt or pepper or anything like that. You can take this, put it in a fry pan, mush it down into a little patty. Wait till it cooks, because you're not going to eat raw hamburger. Wait till it cooks and then taste it, and you'll know if your meatballs are ready. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to roll it in my hand. Most of the times they say have a thing of water beside you. And the reason I'm doing it this way is I don't want the meat under my fingernails. And so I'm going to put them on a pan. I don't know if you can see that or not. Put them on a pan, And you can freeze them just like that. Put them in a bag in your freezer. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to bake them first, then put them in a bag after they've cooled, and then put them in the freezer. So let me start making these up and I'll tell you directions for baking them. Okay, this is what the meatballs turned out looking like. I've got them on a large pan with non-stick aluminum foil. You can use parchment paper. You can use whatever you have. Now, this is when you want to make your choice. Do you want to put them in the freezer like this? Or do you want to bake them and then put them in the freezer? I'm going to take these over to the oven. I want to bake them today. And it's 375 for 15 minutes. I will turn them in the middle of that and judge at the end if they're done by using a meat thermometer. And then I can tell they're done. And then you can freeze them. Put them in a baggie, zip them up, and just put them in your freezer. Then you have meatballs. Okay? Okay, I'm going to put them in the oven right now. And they baked actually 20 minutes at 375. I took a internal temperature thermometer, and you want to be at 160. Now the reason behind that is after you get them out of the oven, they're going to sit there and continue cooking. So you don't want them too done because they'll get tough. Okay, I'm going to taste one of these for you. And I'm going to give you some tips in a minute that'll help you through this process. These are to die for. With the Italian sausage in there and nutritional yeast that gives them a little cheese flavor. The sofrito of the celery, carrots, onions, and garlic. Absolutely delicious. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple tips in a minute. I'll be right back. Well, that was delicious. I would suggest if you have little kids that do not like heat to use a plain sausage in here. But for the adults or anybody that likes heat, this hot Italian sausage was the way to go. My tips for you on the binding of the meatballs. As you know, gluten-free, you can't just put breadcrumbs in there. Well, you can buy gluten-free breadcrumbs, but here are a couple other ones that you can use. Now, I use 1/4 of a cup of nutritional yeast plus the mashed potatoes, which bound them up. You can use almond flour. You can use the dry mashed potatoes, gluten-free oats. You can use rice, ground up Chex, the plain kind. That'll be your binder too instead of breadcrumbs. Also, you can use pork rinds. It has a pork flavor to it. Just grind them up in your food processor. Take what you want out of it and then put the rest of it in the cupboard in a plastic bag, and you'll have more crumbs for your recipes. Also, like I said, you could fry these, but it was so much easier baking them. And please leave any comments below of any other gluten-free recipes that you're stuck on and you would like to know how to make. Please subscribe to my channel. If you're new, just push the subscribe button at the bottom of the page and click that bell button. Leave me some comments. Boost me up a little bit. And I'll see you next time. Bye.